They came for my road, literal words, literal gate, literal sign. And for a heartbeat, I thought I was in the kind of small town absurdity you only see in cartoons until the lock clicked and I remembered this is real life and real people are awful at reading their own paperwork. So, yeah, picture this, a shiny new gate planted smack across the only way into my land, a polite little placard about community standards, and a note that if I wanted to drive through, I'd have to join something I'd never heard of and start paying dues to use what was already mine. I'll tell you the short version right up front, they picked the wrong guy to lock out. But the longer version is better, because the longer version has midnight maps, a stack of deeds that smell like old paper and stubbornness, and the kind of quiet anger that doesn't roar so much as it files an affidavit. Act 1. The choke point. I first saw the gate on a Tuesday. The morning had that cold, brittle light that makes every color sharper, the kind of sky that looks honest. I pulled up the gravel, stopped the truck, and sat there for a second because it didn't make any sense. There's a gate where my access road should be. A galvanized metal thing, less threatening than bureaucratic, and a sign nailed to it with neat corporate font telling me yes, telling me that the new homeowners association had established controlled access and that membership was mandatory for continued use. As if you could invoice a deed. Most people would get mad and maybe honk, maybe post a photo with the right amount of cursing and outrage. That's not me. I felt a different, colder thing, the kind of focus that comes after you realize you're dealing with someone who doesn't actually know what they're doing. So I took pictures. I walked around, I photographed the post, the padlock, the sign. I filmed the chain rattling in the wind, evidence, I told myself, like a mantra. Turns out evidence is a strange kind of comfort. It makes anger manageable. I spent that afternoon in the kitchen with lamplight and a pile of county records spread out like a map of patience. There are few things more soothing than clarity. The original plat map with my name on the bottom, the recorded deed with an old notarized stamp, the sale agreements for each lot up the road. Buried inside those PDFs and paper copies, the fine print most people never read because life is busy and lawyers are expensive, was an easement clause. It said the homeowners had the right to use the road for access. It also, in language you could set your watch by, said the road itself remained my private property. Translation, they could drive on it, but they couldn't put a gate there, and they certainly couldn't start billing me for using my own driveway. So I wrote a letter. Now, I'm not a lawyer, you don't need to be, but I am a man who grew up around contracts and carpentry with a long, simmering distrust of people who assume authority because they printed a newsletter. The letter was tidy, factual, and merciless. I copied the deeds, pasted the plat, quoted the easement clause, and then because I liked the poetic rhythm of deadlines, I gave them 48 hours to take the gate down. The letter ended the way every good ultimatum should remove the obstruction or I remove it and bill you for the cost plus legal fees. Certified mail return receipt requested. I dispatched it like someone sending a final invoice to a delinquent client. Act 2, the countermove. I waited. Not like someone waiting for a miracle, but like someone waiting for mathematics to do its work. 48 hours in a small neighborhood is long. In my head, it stretched and filled with possibilities. Would they plead ignorance? Would they double down and call the sheriff? Would they send someone over with a clipboard and the righteous look of people who believe rules are moral law? Then something happened that I hadn't expected. On day 2, a neighbor I barely knew, a woman named Claire, retired schoolteacher, and the sort of person who knits and knits until the stress looks domesticated, knocked on my door. She'd watched the gate go up. She'd watched people fumble through meeting minutes and petition forms. She showed up with a shoebox of receipts and meeting notes. The little things that look insignificant until someone adds them up and finds a pattern. She'd read the deeds too, because apparently Claire reads everything: the homeowner's packet, the note in the mailbox, the clause no one else read. She'd brought her own copies and with a little embarrassed laugh said, "I thought you might want a witness." Claire's appearance was my twist. Not a dramatic, theatrical reveal, but the sort of quiet human surprise that changes the energy in a room. Up until then, this had been a legal tangle. With her there, it became public. She told me she'd been asking questions at board meetings, that the president of the HOA had seemed oddly defensive, and that some people had been looking for ways to manage the road because they thought the new gate would raise property values or keep outsiders away. She used air quotes with a smile like she was sharing a terrible joke. That's when it turned from a thing between me and a gate into a thing the whole community had to reckon with. Armed with my letter, my deeds, and Claire's notes, we did something smart and painfully simple. We made the issue visible. I filed a public declaration at the county records office, not flashy, just blunt and permanent, restating the road's private status and noting explicitly that the HOA had no authority to obstruct it. I sent certified copies of that filing to the board members, to the county, and to the neighbors. It was a line in the sand, written in ink and indexed for posterity. Faced with documentation and the prospect of an ugly, expensive lawsuit, the HOA did what organizations do when cornered. They retreated. Before my 48-hour deadline even expired, the gate was gone. No press release, no apology, just men with work gloves unbolting a metal thing and carrying it away like a shed they'd regretted building. They didn't look up when they passed my pickup. They were efficient and small. The sign came down. The chain was gone. The road mercifully was mine again. Act 3 resolution and the little justice that tastes like relief. But I didn't let it end with a quiet victory, because quiet victories are the kind that invite repeat offenses. You fix a thing, someone else sees weakness and tries again next season. So I didn't just stand there hoisting a coffee and feeling satisfied, though I did that too. I filed the public declaration so everyone could see it. I made sure the county had it recorded where anyone could pull it, and I left a copy in the HOA's mailbox with a short civil note: "You have been served notice. Do not obstruct private property." Some people think justice has to be dramatic. It doesn't. Sometimes justice is a receipt in a shoebox, a notarized crumb in the record, and a retired school teacher who shows up because she thinks the idea is wrong. The HOA may have wanted to build a little kingdom with a keypad and security light, but kingdoms crumble when you forget to check who actually owns the land underneath your castle. There's a lesson tucked into the end of this story, the moral that isn't moralizing, the one that sits in your chest like a quiet bruise, and then eventually like a taut, useful muscle. It's simple: know your documents, and when you know them, use them. People assume power because they think silence equals consent, but silence is lazy, not binding. The law-boring, patient, plodding law is often on the side of whoever took the time to read the deed. Diligence beats bravado. And another thing, community matters. Claire could have stayed home. She could have minded her own business. Instead, she knit and read and showed up. If I had shouted louder or skulked angrier, I might have won or lost on different terms. But what won the day was a quiet coalition of evidence and neighbors who liked their property lines respected. There's a subtle sweetness to that kind of justice, not revenge, not gloating, just the righting of something that felt wrong. So what now? The gate is gone. The road is clear. The HOA board probably went home and argued about meeting minutes and membership dues and who signed what and who didn't. I received no apology. Nobody loves apologies enough to craft them properly anymore, but I did get something better. The knowledge that the tools I already had were enough, and the satisfaction of knowing I could sleep without the sound of a padlock in my head. Here's the part I want you to sit with, and I don't mean that in a preachy way. I mean it as a real question. When someone with a little power wants to reshape the world to fit their taste, who guards the lines? Is it the law, which moves like a careful animal, or is it neighbors who keep their wits and their receipts? And what happens when rules are weaponized by committees who confuse administrative authority with moral authority? I'll leave you with that, because it's the kind of question that makes people argue in comment sections and in kitchen tables, which is exactly where these things should be sorted out. Tell me, have you ever had a small bureaucratic power try to gatekeep your life, literal gate, or otherwise? Drop your story below. Say where you stand on right and wrong, or simply share what you would have done in my shoes. If nothing else, pass this along to someone who thinks paperwork is boring. Sometimes paperwork is the only thing standing between your truck and a locked gate.